Couple. Got that tab, tabbity tab. All right, now we're back on. What's up, folks? What's up? What's up? How's everybody doing? It's been a while since we did the live chat. I think the last time was at Soldier Field versus the Chicago Bears. Sir Goats. Sir's Goat says Breeze pack. Oh my God, I hate the Saints, man. And they hate us too. I can only imagine that the Saints Nation out there, everyone out there, even the lawmakers, I can only imagine that they wash their hair with like jambalaya or some shit. Steven Skits, what's up? Brian, what's up? Let's see. Vince G, only page I follow, man. No disrespect to others, but they speak out of their ass and are always back and forth on their opinions. Well, I appreciate that. Rich, what's up? Corey, what's up? Everybody, what's up? Pratik, what's up? Everybody. Julian, how you doing? What's up, everybody? So I wanted to do, because like I said at the beginning of this live stream, it's been a minute since I've done a live stream, so I figured why not just go ahead and talk about this. And so we're going to talk about the Vikings cap space as it stands right now. So actually, I think this was a week or 2 weeks ago when I last talked about free agents that the Vikings are possibly going to keep or let go. The cap room at that time, or the cap space available heading into next year, was for the Vikings approximately $9 million over the cap. Now I'm looking at over the cap right now, and it's gone up even further, over $11.5 million over the cap. So I'm assuming that's including all the future contracts that they signed. I think it was about 9 players. So they've got a ton of work to do. I don't think the Vikings are going to be really in the hunt as far as trying to go after big name free agents. I just don't see how that's going to be possible. And then they also have to make room not just to get under the cap, but also to sign their future draft picks this upcoming 2021 draft. So I'm really looking at 3 players in particular that there's going to have to be 2 of them. I would say there would have to be restructures, or they're going to have to be let go. And one of them, we'll have to see what they do. But I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move. Tanner with the $5 bucket drop. I appreciate that. Hey, I appreciate all you guys out here. The Demon King 82 Packers fan here. Love the channel. One of the very few people who love and know football. Hey, fans of other team on here. Okay, I appreciate that. So there's one player, like I talked about, there's 3 players that I'm going to talk about in terms of managing the cap for the Vikings heading into next season, 2021. There's one player that I feel fairly confident that he's probably seen his last days wearing a purple jersey. There's one guy who I know is going to return, just maybe on a restructure. And there's one guy that I don't know. I think it's a bit of a toss-up. It's 50-50. And let's start with that guy, Riley Reef. And the only reason I bring up Riley Reef is because if you remember last year during the offseason, they approached Riley Reef. Hey, bro, take a pay cut or you're out. That's it. Finito. And he conceded. He said, oh, okay. So he came back on a restructured deal. And this past 2020 season, I mean, I would say he was our best offensive lineman, even with Brian O'Neill there. So that's saying something. So let's look at his cap hits, going into next season. It's nearly $14 million cap hit. He has a $2.2 million dead cap hit if you were to cut him. I would say just because of that dead cap, it's enticing for the Vikings to entertain. Now, if they do approach him, it's going to be for one of 2 reasons. It will be for number one, like I just mentioned, hey, the dead cap hit. And not only that, but you have nearly a $14 million cap hit if we do keep you on the roster. And then number 2, maybe they're planning to have Ezra Cleveland be their future left tackle. If the Vikings approach Riley Reef, if I were Riley Reef after the season that I just had, I would call their bluff. Are you kidding me? He plays a premium position. If he hits the open market, it's going to be a lot of suitors out there for him. So that will be interesting. I have no idea what they're going to do. If they still believe that Ezra Cleveland is a right guard, and I swear to God, if I see one more mock draft with the Vikings taking an offensive tackle in the first 2 rounds, really? You took Ezra Cleveland last year. So that's number one. I have no idea where the Vikings are going to go with that. Let me know your thoughts in the chat section here. Astro Zeo Sports, cut Barr, Rudy. Funny, we're about to talk about one of them next. That's going to be Kyle Rudolph. So Kyle Rudolph, his cap hit, if he were to remain on the team on his current deal, nearly a $9.5 million cap hit. If you were to cut him outright, it will be $4.35 million in dead cap. Now let's see a June 1st cut. Ooh, a post June 1st cut, that would go down to just under 1.5 million in dead cap. That's going to be enticing. I think the Vikings are going to let him go. And he's a household name in Minnesota, super underrated. And I was one of those guys in the early years of this podcast. I said, man, Kyle Rudolph, I don't know about this guy. He's not the physical tight end that you want to see on your team. But, man, he has improved his game the last 2 or 3 years, especially in blocking. I think Kyle Rudolph can still play. I really, really do. But you have Irv Smith Jr., you have the emergence of Tyler Conklin late in the season in 2020. I think Kyle Rudolph, I think he's seen his last days with the Minnesota Vikings. I think he can play. And honestly, if you look at his stats now, if you go back, the last live stream I did, that was against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. And he did no favors for himself. That first possession where he fumbled the ball away and gave it back to Chicago. But when you throw the ball as few times as the Minnesota Vikings did these last 2 years, there's only so many targets to spread around. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, they're going to be the top 2 guys. But if you look at his stats, I mean, my God, even going back through this whole season, goodness, week 1, he had 2 targets. Week 2, 1 target. 3 targets, 2, 4, 1, 4, 5, 3, 8, 2. And the week where he had 8 targets, that was week 12? He had 7 catches for 68 yards. The second highest target total he had was in week 10, and that was coincidentally at Chicago, that game I live streamed. 5 targets, 4 catches, 63 yards. If you give this man targets, he can still make plays as a pass-catching tight end. I just think cap-wise, it just makes sense to go younger. You've got Tyler Conklin. You've got Irv Smith Jr., who's your tight end 1 at this point. I think he's going to be gone. Now, going back to Astro Zeo Sports, Anthony Barr. That is the third guy that I want to talk about. And before I get into that, man, listen, I've trolled him long enough, the jokes and all that stuff. I'm being dead serious when I say this, before I get to the cap number and all that other stuff. I'm no more joking around. Anthony Barr, who I truly believe is the most overrated player in the history of the Minnesota Vikings franchise, but also somewhat maybe the most disappointing player in the history of the Minnesota Vikings franchise, because I'm telling you, his rookie year, Anthony Barr was a force. This was a game changer. He looked like a leader. He was going to make this whole defense gel together. He was on that Khalil Mack level, bro. No bullshit. Ever since his rookie year, I mean, he's been a complete shell of himself. This man, his body language, the way he looks on the field, the way he moves around, and I've been saying this, forget 2020, where obviously he went on IR early in the season. Going back, the last 4 years, 19, 18, 17, 16, I've been saying all those 4 years, he looks like a guy who doesn't care about the sport. He looks like a guy that's out there just collecting a check. He looks like a guy who's comfortable. He looks like a guy who knows that he has infinite job security. He looks like a guy who knows that he's untouchable. And he's Mike Zimmer's first draft pick. And when you've been coddled like Anthony Barr has by Mike Zimmer, I can understand why Anthony Barr may feel that way. He has been such a disappointment. Either, okay, he looks like he doesn't care and he's coasting, like Mike Zimmer said in 2016. Either that, or he's just not a good player, straight up. But anyway, going to the cap hits. Boop, 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 boop. 2021, he has the third highest cap hit. That is insane. At just over $15 million cap hit. If you were to cut him outright before June 1st, that would be $7.8 million in dead cap. So no bueno. But if you do a post June 1st cut, it's a $2.6 million dead cap hit. I know Anthony Barr is going to come back. If it were me, he would have been gone long ago. They're going to restructure him. And especially when you just came off a season of IR where you didn't play, you have no leverage. I would imagine the Vikings are going to approach him and say, hey, take a lesser deal than what you're getting right now. But I going into year 8, we've seen all there is to see with them. So that's my 3 guys that I'm looking at first. There are other guys out there. My God, real quick. There's one in particular, Shamar Stefan, cap number 2021, $5 million, just over. You cut him now, $1.3 million in dead cap. Yes, he should take a restructure, as in he should be cut. This dude was so terrible. As far as I'm concerned, the defensive line, DJ Wonnum, Danielle Hunter, and maybe it's just me. I feel like I saw James Lynch play only for 8 snaps total this past. Let me look it up real quick because this is gonna Vikings snap count 2020, and we'll get to some of your thoughts too. By the way, I'm not going to leave you hanging, but I have to see this. James Lynch, come on, baby. And what was that against Seattle? He had a sack too. Blah 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 blah. D-line. Where you at, baby? James Lynch. What I say, 8 snaps? That's terrible. He had 59 snaps. He played 5.5% of the defensive snaps for the Minnesota Vikings in 2020. That is insane. How does he not get more playing time, especially with the bums that were playing defensive tackle? I don't get it, man. But Shamar Stefan, he needs to go. Let's look at some of your thoughts. Sam says Ifedi was the 5th most double team player in the league. Oh, okay. That's great. Oh, you're saying, if he gets on one-on-one situations, he'll be more successful? I mean, maybe, but when you tweet out fool's gold, then okay, go off, fam. You're not the only one that's getting double teamed. That's not an excuse for me. Julianne Marker says, I'm assuming you're saying Lynch. Lynch should be playing way more. I completely agree. He needs to play straight up. Let's see. North Stars, the Steagle says, would you bring Ifedi back? Absolutely not. In fact, I think I covered that in the free agency podcast for pending free agents for the Minnesota Vikings. Pretty sure Odenigbo is a free agent. I would not bring him back. Or a vet minimum deal to be a backup for depth, sure, but I'm super good. Even I think the Vikings, they have to take an edge in the first round, maybe the first, or they don't even have a second round pick, do they? Ooh, baby. I think they almost have to take an edge in the first round just because I like DJ Wonnum. I think he has a bright future. But the question marks surrounding Danielle Hunter, we don't know if this dude is coming back. I'll believe it when I see it. So just for an insurance policy, you got to take an edge in the first. So if you bring back Ifedi Odenigbo, yeah, vet minimum deal. Otherwise, see ya. Lucas's stash says, damn, you're almost at 8K. Fire emoji. Yeah, I appreciate all you guys. I mean, I have no agenda with this podcast. I don't care if anything ever happens with this. Worst case, this is a hobby for me, but it does mean a lot that, you guys chime in with your thoughts. You like the content. I really do appreciate it. All of you. Mr. Poole doesn't call on me with the $4.99 bucket drop says, what do you say to targeting the Packers center in free agency and moving Bradbury to left guard, possibly cheaper than Thuney and established against big nose tackles like Hicks? It's an interesting theory, but I think just because, now make no mistake about it, I think Bradbury needs to improve. I think he's had a solid first 2 years, but he needs to get better. He needs to get better with his upper body strength. But I think to some degree, based on what we saw with Pat Elflein, I mean, moving him from, goodness, he was center at first, then you moved him to guard. I think just because what we saw with that, his rookie year, I mean, he was pretty damn good in 2017. But I think just because of that, you should leave well enough alone. See what Bradbury can do in his third year out of, what is it, NC State? See what it is that he can do. I wouldn't mess around with that. I think you're better off just addressing guard positions with natural guard players. No more switching around. Not for me. Let me actually look some up real quick. Okay. Next, what else are some of your thoughts? Boom, boom, boom. Steve Warren says RG3 is a backup quarterback. No, we can't do that. You know why? Steve Warren, we can't do that? Is because we have Sean Mannion, the greatest backup quarterback of all time. Not only that, in all seriousness, this coaching staff, they've demonstrated that the quarterbacks that they have had that's had any sort of elusive ability that makes those flashy plays, Case Keenum, Kyle Sloter, I even interviewed him, a little over a year ago, I want to say, or maybe it was just about a year ago. You can check that out if you want. He gave his full, honest take on what happened. But Case Keenum, Kyle Sloter, I just don't see that happening. They want the traditional quarterback, doesn't make mistakes. We want quarterbacks that just if you're a backup quarterback, basically just throw 1,000 yards if you have to come in for the year. North Stars then follows up and says, if we bring RG3 in and make him the starter, we can run a mix of Wildcat and outside zone. Zimmer would never let that happen. Besides, Kirk Cousins is way better. Let's see. Anthony Barr to defensive end. No. Listen, as much as I get on Anthony Barr, moving him to defensive end would be, you don't want those problems. Breaking down just his game. If you have Anthony Barr as a defensive end, that means he is nonstop going to go up against offensive tackles. Anthony Barr literally cannot shed blocks. He can't. I understand this is a very popular take. Just put his hand in the dirt, let him go after the quarterback. It's what he did at UCLA. You don't want those problems. This dude gets locked up by running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and now you're giving the idea, have him go up against offensive tackles too. He's going to look even worse than what he already does as a 4-3 outside linebacker. You don't want those problems, trust me. Let's see. Sama 808 says Heineke is 10 times better than RG3. You remember Taylor Heineke? Or was it Tyler? I can't remember. Taylor or Tyler Heineke looked good with the Washington football team in that playoff game. I remember him. Didn't he do something? He did something stupid. He did something, or maybe I'm thinking of another quarterback. He did something where I want to say it was during training camp. He kicked his door. There was some and he shattered the glass and he got scrapes all over his legs. And then he was like inactive or they cut. He did something, but he was actually not bad. I do remember him. Let's see. You guys will say, yeah, he kicked in a locked door. Was he drunk? That was hilarious. I remember that story. Caleb Hayda says, how many more years with Mike Zimmer? I don't know. Honestly, I feel like based off of what the Wolves have shown, he's going to be here forever. I've just accepted it. I for this off season, I'm good. I'm not going to destroy Zim until the season starts again and he does stupid shit. But I honestly believe he's going to be here until he decides to retire. That's it. Because it's funny. any other head coach, we compare them to their peers as far as other active head coaches in the league. But with Mike Zimmer, he was so much better than the previous coaches we had. Our standards are pretty low, to be honest. So I think he's going to be here forever. I said after the Niners loss and the offseason of last year that for me, Zim, he deserves to come back in 2020 because you did beat the Saints. Okay, great. He deserves to come back, but only for the 1-year deal, only to come back. And the expectations for me was you got to make it to the conference championship game. That was my expectations. If you don't, you're fired. So he would be gone by now. But, the Wolves, yeah, he's okay. And it could always be worse. We're too afraid. That's a loser's mentality. I don't think the Wolves have the guts to let go of Mike Zimmer. Let's see. Let's see. North Stars says, how about we switch to a 3-4 and put Hunter at outside linebacker, Hercules and James Lynch as a 5-tech, hands in the dirt. That does sound enticing, but I think you got to leave well enough alone with Danielle Hunter. Sure, I mean, you can have him start a little bit back as an outside linebacker, but from the dirt where you can immediately push back the offensive tackle, I think we got to leave that alone. 4-3 is what we're going to do. I think that's what we're going to stick with. Let's see. Bradley Nelson says Brett Jones start on the offensive line. He should have been starting the last 2 years. He's been better than Drew Samia and Pat Elflein, but I don't think it's crazy, man. You think about guys like Brett Jones. You think about guys like Jarius Wright, even to some degree Kyle Sloter, where there just seems to be some level of politics with certain players. I feel like any other team in the league, if you have a player show up on the field and they make plays, you would say, oh, okay, maybe this was a fluke, but let's give them a little bit more PT. Give them a few more snaps. Let's see what they can do. But, I mean, you can have these dudes go on the field, play lights out, but, we invested this draft pick in Laquan Treadwell. We invested this draft pick in Pat Elflein. And indeed, it's just a level of stubbornness there that instead of doing what's best for the team to win, they want the team to win only if it's under their circumstances. So I don't know. Brett Jones, they'll probably bring him back again just for him to sit on the bench again, but should be starting. If nothing else, if you don't address guard in the draft, worst case, you do have Brett Jones to be a guard. He's better than anything else we have. RMR33 says they don't practice good. What a crock of shit that was, huh? Practice. Oh my God. Don't get me started on that again. Practice. Sama 808 says our schedule next year is brutal. If we miss playoffs, I hope they make a change at head coach. Let's look at the schedule real quick, actually. I know the opponents are set. I don't know if the schedule have been set. Either way. I actually do remember taking a quick glance at it and said to myself, oh, this is going to suck. Okay. Their home games, besides their divisional rivals, they've got the LA Rams. Oof. So whoever mentioned Garrett Bradbury bringing the Packers center, he's better up against nose tackles like Akeem Hicks going up against Aaron Donald. That's going to be fun. Seattle, they're actually playing at US Bank Stadium. Is this the first time that's ever happened? Cleveland Browns, they're a lot better now with Kevin Stefanski, probably going to be coach of the year. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I know they had an embarrassing loss in the first round against the Browns, but Mike Tomlin, he's a hell of a head coach. And the Dallas Cowboys, who knows what's going to happen with that team? Dak Prescott, are they going to bring him back? Is Mike McCarthy still going to be the head coach? So that's a bit of a wild card. You don't know what to really expect from the Dallas Cowboys. And then the road games, you've got the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, mobile quarterbacks. We always struggle against quarterbacks like that. The San Francisco 49ers, that is going to be brutal, especially assuming that they're all healthy again. Oh my God, that is a physical team. The Baltimore Ravens, oh God, the same thing. And then Lamar Jackson going to the outside. Cincinnati Bengals, they're trash. Carolina Panthers, they're also trash. That is, I mean, just off the top of my goodness, the toughest opponents that you have, Chicago, Green Bay. So that's 2, and you play them 4 times total. You've got the Rams, Seahawks, Browns, Steelers. You've got Niners, Ravens. That is, goodness, that's 8 tough teams you're playing. And then with the extra game you're playing up against the Packers and the Bears, that's 10 tough games that you're playing. And who knows what's going to happen with the Detroit Lions? They've made a lot of personnel moves. This is going to be a tough year in 2021 for the Vikings. That is going to be a brutal schedule. DB Sauce says schedule came out, ? I don't believe so. The opponents are set, but the schedule is not. Caleb Hayda, do you think Justin Jefferson will eventually go like Stefan Diggs? If we keep doing the same shit, yeah. If we do, absolutely. You have to change. You have to adapt. Lessons learned. If you're a kid, you put your hand on the hot stove. Oh, that's hot. Oh my God. And the parents like, I told you, don't do it. And they turn around 5 minutes later and do the same thing again. You can't be surprised. Oh my God, my hand hurts again. You got to realize what you have with Justin Jefferson, man. But if they keep doing the same stuff and it's run, pass, defense, run, pass, defense, then yeah, he'll be gone. Brian Henning, do you think the Vikings keep Barr? Yep, there's no question he's going to come back. And I actually, to some degree, even though he's not that good of a player, he's pretty much a mediocre player, but I understand why they would really bring him back this time around. I would bring back Eric Wilson only at the right price. I mean, push come to shove, if you're paying both Barr and Eric Wilson the same, Wilson, he's a free agent, I would keep Eric Wilson. But, I mean, the linebackers, you got to have something there, even if Anthony Barr is there for leadership. Okay. Eric Simon, if Justin Fields or Trey Lance was available at 14 in the draft, would you take them or focus on the O-line and D-line? Assuming that Mike Zimmer is the head coach here forever and he's going to retire when he wants to, he's got unlimited job security. If any of those 2 quarterbacks are available, I doubt Justin Fields will be available. But if they are, Justin Fields, I think he would do well. Or I think it would be what's the word I'm looking for? I think there would be less headache with Justin Fields as the quarterback with Mike Zimmer as the head coach compared to a Trey Lance who really, really needs. He's so raw. He really needs to be nurtured to whatever team he goes to. You need an offensive head coach or an offensive coordinator who you know is going to be here for the long term, such as a Bill Belichick with a Josh McDaniels, I think his name is. I would say Justin Fields. Other than that, you got to go defensive end. Maybe guard. We'll see what they do. Wilson at $9 million would be a hard pass. Yeah, I'd pass on that too. You can't afford that. He's good, but he's not one of the best linebackers in the league good. Which I understand they're going to make more than $9 million anyway. But if you look at just his stats alone, it was very impressive this year with 122 tackles. It's pretty legit. Couple of you are mentioning Wyatt Davis. I'm not in draft mode yet, but give me. Actually, I'm not going to put myself on a timeline. Normally, I wait until after the official football season is over with. So after the Super Bowl takes place, and then I go into draft mode. I look at film on college guys. But either way, he will definitely be a guy that I'll talk about as far as a draft profile prospect for the Minnesota Vikings. couple of you are mentioning Joe Thuney as well from the Patriots. I mean, we've been talking about him the last 2 years. Go out and get a guard, man. But I wouldn't be surprised if they keep Ezra Cleveland at right guard. And it's like, if you want a guard, just sign a guard. There's too many let's switch around players and let's get cute and let's try to out scheme the bad talent that we have with our zone blocking scheme. It's just, why not just invest in talent on the offensive line? Brian O'Neill, even though I would say that this wasn't his best of seasons, the first 2 seasons he was laser sharp. He was still pretty good, but it was a bit of a down year based on his standards. Brian O'Neill is talented. Invest in talent on the offensive line. Stop trying to outsmart your way around bad offensive linemen. Which, by the way, that's going to be something I'll talk about. He's going to be up for a contract extension at this point. Maybe if you're the Vikings with that quote unquote down year for Brian O'Neill, maybe this is the time to be like, hey, I don't know. Like, I have no doubt he's going to bounce back in 2021, but I don't know, man. Not as good as your first 2 years. We're gonna lowball you a little bit. No, he deserves his money. Great player, absolute great player. There was one game, I want to say it was against the Lions. I can't remember. There was a neutral zone infraction or an offsides, right? So the whistle is blown, the play is called dead. Somebody jumped off sides and just slightly got past Brian O'Neill. So the play was already over. Brian O'Neill immediately, so he's in his stance, immediately lifted up and bulldozed the dude back after the whistle is gone. Whistle is long blown. Boop! That dude is a bouncer, bro. He's got that Quentin Nelson attitude, and I love that. If only we had 4 more dudes like that, then we're talking business. Everyone's talking about run, pass, punt. We'll do a couple of more for you folks out there. Corey says, yo, you know what blows the hardest about being a Vikings fan besides the perpetual sadness? We never get to stop talking about our offensive line. I agree. There's been a lot of great things that Rick Spielman has done, but if one of the first things that we always talk about as far as being a major cause for a failed season is the offensive line, then at what point, if you keep demonstrating that you're just going to keep doing the same shit over and over again? Yes, we have Justin Jefferson. I was completely wrong. That may have been, I don't think I've been more wrong than my initial take. I compared Justin Jefferson. I say he's going to be a solid wide receiver too. I compared him to Mohamed Sanu. Clown, talking about myself. But he's done a lot of great things. But okay, Pro Bowls, first team All Pro, second team All Pro, all these players. But okay, are we just doing it for the sparkles and the sprinkles and the confetti, or are we doing it to get championships? That's what I'm trying to do. And that offensive line has been a major cause for why we haven't had a chance to really win a championship. Against the Eagles, that 2017 NFC Championship game, I mean, that D-line destroyed us. Absolutely. You can out-scheme your talent on the O-line for so long, but eventually you're going to go up against some bruisers. You're going to face guys like the Niners next year. You're going to face guys like Aaron Donald next year. You're going to face guys like back in 2017, the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. You need to invest in talent, man. So yeah, it sucks. We have to talk about this every single year. Lee Wilson says, what would you give for Watson? I almost feel like, would the Houston Texans be interested in a Kirk Cousins, first of all? If not, you have to execute some sort of 3-team trade with, let's say, the Niners, and then who takes on Jimmy Garoppolo, or do they cut him, whatever. But all that aside, assuming they'll take Kirk Cousins, what would you give up? Obviously, this first round pick. You have to give up next year's first round pick. You may have to give up the year after that. It may have to be almost similar to a Khalil Mack type of haul. You're going to have to throw away a lot. And assuming that, Mike Zimmer, the defensive guru, then you can find guys in the third, the fourth, the fifth round that you can coach up. You're going to have to give up at least 2 first-round picks, maybe 2 second-round picks in addition to that, or 3 first-round picks and a second or third with that. You're going to have to give up a lot. King Kong says, should we draft a kicker, or is there a good enough free agent kicker this year? I don't know, because yes, it's easy for us to say, Dan Bailey, listen, man, you were hot ass garbage in 2020. We need to move on. But then even when you go back to Blair Walsh, you go back to how they treated Kai Forbath, you go back to Daniel Carlson, you look at Dan Bailey right now. I mean, is it more of a cultural thing with the Minnesota Vikings and their kickers? Is it the grumpy old man style of Mike Zimmer who hates kickers and quarterbacks alike? Is it that? Because sometimes, especially, it's such a mental game with kickers that you need to give them a pat on the back once in a while. But every chance that Zim gets after a bad kicking game, he pretty much takes shots at them in the media. So does it even matter if we were to bring in someone else at kicker? I'm not sure about that. T-Mass says, what's your shirt say, Randy? It's Papa Bear. It's Papa Bear. Got 2 kids. Got my little boy, he's 2, and my daughter, who is just turned 1 in December. We'll do one more. Green Choice Carpets. Hey, you okay? We will go receiver, 1 pick, good show. I appreciate the good show. I have no idea what you're saying, but I'm going to assume, Green Choice Carpets, that you're saying that should we take a receiver in the first round? Is that what you're saying? I'm going to assume that's what you're saying. I am going to say no. I understand we need a wide receiver 3, but when you throw the ball as few times as the Vikings did the last 2 seasons, do you even almost need a legit wide receiver 3? But if we are going to go down that road and say we need a WR3, you already have him. His name is Irv Smith Jr. I know he's a tight end, but if you just look at wide receiver 3, you want this to be the third most targets you have on your team. You want him to be the third game changer, the third playmaker on your team. It's Irv Smith Jr. He's already there. So you're okay with having a guy like BC Johnson or Chad Beebe again, even though technically they'd be the wide receiver 3, but really they'd be the wide receiver 4. I feel like even if you want to put out, let's say, move Irv Smith Jr. off the line next to the offensive line, move him outside, let's say the slot or something, like you would with a wide receiver 3, you can do that with a guy like Irv Smith Jr. You already have him. I think the Vikings, there's more of a focus to be said for the Minnesota Vikings on the defensive and offensive lines. That's where it starts. Wide receiver 3 would be nice, but we already have him. If anything, it'd be more for just unnecessary jewelry if we were to do that in the first round. Jack says they just aren't utilizing him properly, in my opinion. I agree. In fact, real quick, before we sign off here, let's look at this dude's stats. His targets, anyway. Which is also crazy off topic how, goodness, Justin Jefferson, he didn't make his first start, I believe, until the 3rd game. Was that against the Titans? Let's see. Irv Smith Jr. in 2020. Man, I'm going to go down the number as far as each game and the targets he had in each game. 1, 4, 1, 5, 5, 1, 4, 2, 4, 4, 9, 3. Now, the game where he had 9 targets, that was against New Orleans. That was a blowout. He did have 6 catches for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I mean, look at the rest of those targets. I mean, basically 5 or less the rest of the way. And even, I mean, my God, week 5 against Seattle, 5 targets, 4 catches for 64 yards. Get this man the ball. Get Justin Jefferson the ball. Get Adam Thielen the ball. I understand you have the best running back in the game with Dalvin Cook. I'm not saying don't run the ball. You don't want 2018 Vikings offense where you just go pass, pass, pass all the time. But I mean, if you think about the 2-minute drills that they've had, I mean, if you just the second and long situations where they just run the ball, if you just get a little bit more aggressive, just slightly in those situations, then you're going to see the passing game take off even more. You're going to see more targets for Justin Jefferson, Thielen, and Irv Smith Jr. But I think because of that conservative nature, especially when, I mean, let's say you have a 2-point lead with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter and you just want to run the clock and the other team has all 3 timeouts, what are you doing? I'm not saying they have to go all Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, just have a balanced offensive attack. That's all I'm saying. Because when they do pass the ball, I mean, they're so efficient. The gains are so much when they do it. It's like, oh, man, you would think they pass the ball a lot. But it's like, no, if you pass the ball even more, our passing game can be even way better than it is right now. I always say one more, and then I always do like 2 or 3 more. We'll do one more for real. Bum. Derek Murph. This will be the last one. Derek Murph says, Randy, what do you think about Kirk overall and what he did this year? I mean, I think he did everything he was asked to do. He came to Minnesota, and actually, let me bring it up. I want to make sure I'm correct with this. I believe he played, Kirk Cousins did what, 6 years in Washington before coming to the Minnesota Vikings? And if that's the case, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. He is who he is at this point. It's one thing to say, oh, man, he just needs to develop better pocket awareness, which to some degree he kind of did, especially as the year went on. He did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 6 years in Washington before coming to Minnesota. I think based on his skill set, he had a hell of a year. My God, the offense is the reason why Kirk Cousins and the offense carried the Minnesota Vikings in 2020. This man had 35 touchdowns, completed 68% of his passes, over 4,200 yards. Dude was a beast, but he does have his limitations at the same time. So I think based on his skill set and what he's asked to do, and with the offensive coordinator not really giving him permission to utilize his weapons to his full capabilities, think about that. 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns with throwing the ball as little as the Vikings did. Man, I think he did well. He's not a Deshaun Watson. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Russell Wilson. That's not who he is. He did a hell of a job. That's just me. One more. All right, and I swear that's it. Bump. Caleb Hayter says, will Dalvin Cook be able to stay on the field in 2021? I mean, it's trending that way. Dalvin Cook, I think he missed, how many games did he miss this year? Wasn't very many, I don't believe. Dalvin Cook, last year, 2020, he played in 14 games. So he missed 2 games. It's pretty impressive. It's trending in the right direction. But actually, goodness, even if you count 2019, the last 2 seasons, he's played 14 games each. So you look at his first 2 years, 4 games in 2017, 11 games in 2018, and then 14. It's trending in the right direction. And actually, one of the games that he missed was the Detroit Lions. That was because his father, unfortunately, passed away. So he went to be with his father. So really, he only missed 1 game due to injury. Nah, Dalvin Cook, I think he's going to be fine. That was a big question mark coming into this season. But 14, really, he was available for a 15th game. He's good. So that'll be it. I'll do a podcast tomorrow. Again, I appreciate all you folks for joining on the live stream. I haven't done this since Chicago. That was what, week 6 or whatever, week 9. I don't know. I don't remember. But podcast will be tomorrow. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.